Welcome, everybody, to an evening of poetry with some really wonderful, exciting poets. And I say that because they were poets joining me that I wanted to hear read. Joining me tonight is Nami, Christopher Lee Miles, and Annie Wenstrup.
Hi, good evening. 안녕하세요. My name is Nami, and I'm a poet and writer in Juneau, Alaska, Shinge Ani, the ancestral and unceded home of the Shinge Akwan. It's an honor to be here amongst some other beautiful poets, and 감사합니다, Erin, for inviting me to read a few pieces this evening. Let's see, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, just as a visual description, I'm a Asian American woman in her 30s with long black hair and a black shirt and dangly earrings. Someone was talking about earring culture in Alaska. And red lipstick, and I'm sitting in my home. So I loved the invitation to also bring another poet into the room through their work. And so instead of ending with, or I'm not quite sure of everybody's plans in terms of their poem order, but I wanted to actually begin with a different poet because she's one of my favorite poets in Alaska. It's one of my favorite poems that she wrote. And I like the lens that the framework that it sort of sets up in terms of thinking about my own work and thinking about land. So I'm thinking about place. I'm going to read a poem that at the time that a copy was sent to me, her working title was As Told To, and it's by the illustrious Ernestine Hayes. As Told To. I tell my grandchildren stories. My grandmother told me stories. Her grandmother told her stories. Her grandmother told her to tell and treasure and taste. I ask my grandchildren to taste the food. My grandmother tasted food. Her grandmother tasted food. Her grandmother asked her to taste. The taste of salmon, blessed and facing ever upstream. The taste of cockles, respected and fresh in the shell. The taste of a sweet, thin blade of the coming summer's branches. The taste of urchin and halibut and dried eggs and seal oil, seal grease and yana e kanayadi. I'm sorry about the language pronunciation there, just as a side note. The taste of language, the taste of laughter and balance and warfare and peace. The taste of truth, the taste of freedom. Now others tell us how to say, I miss you. Now others tell us the meaning of our own stories. Now others tell us who to be, when to speak, where to look. They tell us how to be educated, how to be civilized, how to be human. We ask them to weigh the substance of our worth. We ask them to tell us our own history and to correct our own thinking. We ask them, why are we here? And when they answer, we believe them. We believe the stories. They tell us the stories. They heard the stories they take for their own and give back to us diminished and forced onto an altar through a lens inside their borders over the coals of their history without taste. Hagu, come find the taste of salmon blessed, the taste of respect, the taste of that sweet thin blade. Taste the salmon, taste the deer, taste the forest, taste the ocean, taste these stories, taste this freedom, taste this truth. And that's As Told To by Ernestine Hayes. So like I said, this is one of my favorite poems of all time, and one of my favorite poems of Ernestine's. And I like thinking of it as maybe a lens for some of the other pieces that I'm going to read to be seen through. in terms of seeing it through the lens of returning, seeing it through the lens of intergenerational learning and also nurturing, and seeing it through the lens of language and of stories, and thinking about the way we experience our stories. So I'm just going to read 3 other pieces, if that's okay, time permitting. The first one is really short. It's I think they all really, the next 2 pieces all sort of revolve around my experience as a mother, as a daughter, as watching my mother interact with as a mother and as a daughter, and watching them, watching my son interact with my mother, his grandmother, and as well as another piece in terms of Korea and my relationship with language and with Korea. So this first piece is called Crowd. It's from my visit to Korea last year. Just 2 things you need to know going into it is I'll use the Korean word oma, which means mom. And there's a character I use, which is like this question mark inside a box, which like maybe shows you've seen it like on your phone when somebody sends you like an emoji that your phone doesn't compute. And so it does the question mark in a box. So I use that in my writing to indicate when people say things to me in Korean that I don't understand, but it's hard to say question mark in a box. So I'm just going to use the phrase words to mean. They said words to me and I don't know what those words mean. So Crowd. As we walked through Seoul today, we got stuck in a small group of men in suits. My oma was trying to pass them because they were walking very slow and a crowd was forming around them. When one of them shook someone's hand, I asked my oma who he was, but I could not understand her, and sometimes she was too busy or too determined to translate things, and also she was trying to figure out how to pass them. And so I turned to one of the men in suits who had one of those translucent radio things in his ear, and I said in Korean, "I'm sorry, I'm from America. Who is that?" And he said in Korean, "That is words. So I said in Korean, "I'm sorry, I don't speak Korean well. Could we speak English?" So he said in English, "It is the president." And this is a little portrait of my oma, who an hour ago hand-fed her teenage grandson samgyeopsal wrapped in a lettuce leaf and refilled his bowl of doenjang jjigae as he was actively eating out of it, and who stood up and moved to his side of the table in order to move every dish he loved 2 centimeters closer to him, and who had just now walked around Yoon Suk-yeol, the newly elected president of South Korea, and was waving for us to follow. That's the first piece. So strange to do this via Zoom. I'm just going to name that, there's like, no, I'm just kind of speaking to myself into the quiet. And so I'm going to call in an audience and imagine them and thank their energy for being here as listeners. And so that I feel a little less alone. Oh, thank you. Oh, thanks for the emojis, guys. All right, the second piece of 3. This one is called Tiger Mom. When they ask about your tiger mom, I hope you'll say I was soft. Say I was simple, tenacious, that I chewed my own bones just to keep my teeth sharp, that I once made soup for a sick vulture, that some evenings I circled you like a choice and fell asleep. Tell them we walked together, a bouquet of wild footsteps, moons rising in the mud, trails of light, small echoes. Tell them about the good mornings, when we would feast for breakfast or when I'd snip a kiss into your ear. Or even the dark days, your face a lighthouse, my chest a cliff, our tongues 1,000 spines, so rough they could skin a man, so gentle they could read poems. Tell them I did my best. The other night I dreamt a man was driving a truck across time and I hopped in. At any moment, memories sneak up on us, bum a ride. Once I stuck a Roman candle in the ground and it fell over. Stars shot at our family instead of the sky. Pow, 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 until your uncle kicked it away. When I met your father, he treated me like a holiday. We were so in love, we lit each other on fire. He had no fireworks to give, so he stole them. We made you a perfect bottle rocket. You wonder why I bite a lie right out of you, why I smother you in a mother's temper before you ignite, why you are having trouble breathing, why ashes stream down your cheeks. Child, you and I are divine. We are sacred. We are sacrifices, legends, proof of prayer, protectors. We are small explosions, so fallen we can't tell sky from being kicked. Will you believe me that I can't help but raise you like a rescue? Sometimes you sing the song I made you with, and all I hear are sirens. You cower the way I cower, so I cower again, because there are so many ways to ruin you. Be braver than I was, so you can forgive yourself often. Tell them you're the tiger son, an unfinished folk tale, a new tradition. Tell them your mom carried you, your neck in her jaws. Say she chased you backwards, she nuzzled you inside out. Say she leapt to love you. She licked her wounds in the air. Thank you. And I'm just gonna check to make sure if this is addressed to me. Oh, thanks, Christopher. Feel. How am I doing on time? I have one more piece, if that's okay, right? Sorry, I meant to start my timer before we began, but thank you, Erin, for the thumbs up. All right, this is my last piece. It is a little bit longer. It's a short story. It's called 9A. As I was going through my poems, actually, I realized I have a whole bunch of poems that are like 9A, 23B, 15C. I often write about people who are seated next to me on transportation. And this is no different. So this is a piece I wrote last year in Korea also about a man on a train seated next. On the train, excuse me. On the train to Busan, the man in 9A was drop dead gorgeous, by which I mean he was Korean and approximately my age. His suit fit him perfectly and his face fit him perfectly, and none of this was strange until he decided to bow and say hello to me, the Korean in 9B who was trying not to be noticed. Since my limited language skills keep me from having good social skills, I often disguise myself as an aloof Korean girl who is unenthralled with the world. I blew my cover when someone boarded the train with kittens. Ah, 귀엽다, so cute, I squealed. 이름이 뭐예요? I asked, which means, what is the name? And they told me the name, but they told it to me as a long sentence in Korean, and so I had to admit to them in Korean that I'm sorry, I don't speak Korean, and then we didn't talk about the kittens anymore in any language. 귀엽다, I whispered to the cute kittens. Caged darlings. They also didn't speak Korean. I noticed you speak English, 9A said to me in English. Since he also spoke English, he was very excited to speak English with me. Since I am most myself in English, I was very excited to be spoken to. Speaking turned to talking, which turned to laughing, and getting to laugh and making people laugh is something I cannot do in Korean, and when you miss something enough, you can make a reunion out of anything. Eventually, we got in trouble for talking, which I did not realize until he translated what the train attendant said, which was that actually we aren't supposed to talk on the trains, and this he described to me in detail via talking. I work in Seoul, but I live out here, 9A said to me, still talking. Maybe in English he is a rebel. He said he was an engineer, and I said his parents must be proud. I don't know his parents, but I know how to make an Asian man smile. Then, while I was trying to follow directions and not talk to him on a train, 9A gave me his business card with his cell phone number. He said that I could call him or text him if I needed anything, like good places to eat, or if I have an emergency, and he listed those things in that order. He said someone did this for him when he first moved to America, and so he's thinking about that person and wanted to do that for me. And because I have a son and he has a son, and so we are the same, he said. 감사합니다. Thank you, I exclaimed, and I touched his arm in English, and then I untouched him in Korean, and then I tried to say, I like that I met you. 만났어요, 좋아했어요, he corrected me with a grin. And then he chuckled and said in English, you have to be careful because your words sound like I love you. I pretend blushed in Korean and I held his eyes in English. There was no mistake. 감사합니다. Thank you so much for allowing me to read today.
Thank you, Name, so much. Thank you so much for asking me to read. This is an honor to be here. My name is Chris, and I was originally from Minnesota. I was born in the Midwest there in 1982 and grew up there on a farm. And I worked a little bit in my grandpa's grocery store and just kind of had a normal upbringing. Left and went to college, and I studied with a poet named Adrian Lewis for a year, but then I failed college, and then I went to the military, stayed in the military for 4 years, and then came out, went to the GI Bill for undergraduate, and eventually got up here to the interior of Alaska. I'm in Fairbanks right now, originally the homelands of the Dene people, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm nervous, and I'm just kind of babbling. So let me switch what I'm doing and read a poem by a friend of mine. She's actually really closer friends with my wife Madeira than myself, but her name is Jill Ozier, and she's like me. She's an implant from the Midwest. She's a very fine poet, and she has many books out that I encourage everybody to read. This poem is called Cloud Physics. So it is quite different then, if in a mountain town the mountains are close rather than far. Here they are far, their distance away established, consistent year to year, like a parents or siblings. They have their own music. So I confess I do not know what it's like, listening to mountains up close like a lover, the silence of them known, not guessed at. I love that poem. And I'm just going to read two pieces for you. The first one is, thank you, Name. Thank you. I love the encouraging spirit of this read, where people get a chance to say and speak their truth and speak their poems and talk about where they're at. I just really like the vibe of it. So I just want to say thank you for that. And this is the first poem I'm going to read, and I don't really know what it's about. I was just trying to talk about this period of my life, the last 5 years really, and just trying to get into a poem what it means to be alive, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, it doesn't have a title, so I'll just start reading it. The crushed cranberries wilting in the rocky crannies, the wet disintegrating wood chips, the driving spray of the spinning rain drift, the grayish frost-churned high ground back sloping to muck and shrub, the tadpole of redness over the eye of the male grouse, the stone-like rose is blooming, the winter wheat is green. They play sense, Madeira and Zoe, one in the valley, one by the river. The shore is brush, the warmth is chilling the path. The scat is rotting, and the juncos bound with breaking cantilevered hops over the grass and the gravel. The China is two, an oversoul's underside and dawn's amplitude. Near the cracking ice cliffs in the mountains of Delta are the ends of the tundra, driving the supernatural to Drangic, to the waters of Circle, to the bends in the Yukon, to Wiseman, where autumn is a tide that withdraws yet approaches, dragging the summer's heat into its core of pressure, bursting frost and fog, giving September a gold welcome. So yeah, I just mostly write about the weather. I just look at the beauty out there and just kind of write about it. And thanks for the hearts, thanks for the claps, thank you for the encouragement. the building I work at is on Dranjik Drive. And of course, Dranjik's also a river, also called the Black River. And I was thinking about, I have some students up that way, and I was just thinking about them, and I don't know, kind of wrote that. And so this next poem, the last poem, it's actually two poems in one. It's called Cambic Horizon, and it's really an imitation of a Brendan Hillman poem called The Spell. And you can find it in her book, Bright Existence, which I would recommend. If you haven't read it, I like it. And it's like I wrote the same poem twice, and I'll just read both versions. The idea that every sacrifice is inviolable was the shadow around which I grew luminous, gathering the north from around the whirls of yellow loam, the grimy silt in the coarse foot slopes, a paler root grasping the floodplain. For weeks, I felt awakened by water and dark, willfully refusing not to let the lucid go. Then, midstream, the loss of beauty broke its spell. I passed through the fruit so I could eat it, becoming the twin of the apple tree. Thank you, apple. Thank you, tree. Thank you, floodplain and spell. I do not understand you, but thank you. I was gathering the north from around the interior highlands, harvesting scenery on a quest to end the return to sudden light. But I was never in the shallows, never holding the force of flushed visions, creating the intent to render the transhuman subtle or tacit. I was not petrified by lucidity. I was not occasioned in the formless formations of clouds. It was the struggle to be united. It separated Judith from her knife until she dropped it in the well, until she who was nothing is now the I of nothing. Thank you, nothing, for your relation to everyone. Thank you, fear's refrain, for being audible. Thank you for substantiating the amount of love allowed was not empty, but almost utmost. Those are my poems. Thank you for letting me read. Thank you. I'm excited to hear the next person.
Thank you, Christopher. Ida in Nakti, Annie Merganzanek Shiizi, Kanashtukta Denainek Shiizi Idlan, Dene Ishlan Shida. Hello, friends. I'm Annie Wenstrup. My great uncle called me Kanashtukta. I am Denina, and I'm reading from Fairbanks, Alaska. I'm so glad to be here with you. Thank you, Erin and Trish, for organizing this reading. I'd like to begin with the poem from Marie Tozier's Open the Dark called From a Mother's Tale. I am covered in oil, smell like a balm of heaven, a promise unbroken. My origin, the land, the river, the raven. Hands to heal the broken star, the upended heart boy. Warmth, blood, pulse, electric body, sediment to filter the noise of life and all its buzz. Quiet the roots that tug at my hair, my feet. Connection click, click, clack on the thick ice. I gather myself and swim the ocean. I know for whom I return. Yellow the sun, yellow the daisy. Aerosol fine mist released from the dust of plant bones as I walk the forest, looking, searching for you. Rose hips and pollination, bee lover. Okay, first that line is just, all of it's so good, but the connection click, click, clack, I can't tell you how much fun that was to read. As I've worked on my project, the Museum of Unnatural Histories, which revolves around moments of alienation, I found myself gravitating towards poems and poets who write about connection, especially to connection to place. Chinon Marie for this poem. Gugoini in the museum parking lot. I watch her crow, not as a crow crows, but as herself. She's not here for the art. She's here for the minivans that devour diaper bags, car seats, children. She waits for the doors to retract and expel fruit, goldfish, and fries. free for the taking. She scavenges in lurching crab-like steps. Like me, she won't appear human here. While her legs bring her from one delicious scrap to another, I work my own inventory. Once my parents named me Swift Raven, a real Indian princess name. I flew unblinded, my hair in a blue-black braid down my back. Now I'm ungainly, more harpy than girl. My mouth a curve calling for carrion. I'm not here for the art, I'm here for the mirrors, here to unpair earrings and unclasp foil from gum. My beak ready to unbind carapace from quiver. Like Gugoni, I'm a scavenger lurching from one disaster to another. See how together we curate cataclysm's aftermath? While we work, Gugoni tells me a story. Once my grandfather said, a long time ago there was a raven. He opened a door and it was day. Then he drew his wings shut. What Gugoni didn't say, but what I heard, once he closed the door and it was night. Today I'm telling you this story instead. My mouth is a comma, my mouth is exclamation. My mouth is my body holding open the door. Witness my body create day. See how the light appraises my collection. See how the sunlight exposes how shadow bleached everything white. Pretending to be a woman, I roam the museum. Perhaps curiously, there's an increased interest in museum settings and the field of robot-human interactions, particularly in the relationship between speech and the conduct of the participants, their head movements, arm and hand gestures. Today, the robotic docent greets me. Their eye, my lens, we turn our heads to the wall. We see Gauguin's paintings of Tahitian women labeled paradise, Captain Cook's sketches of Aleut women labeled savage, and Edward S. Curtis's mispropped tributes to the frontier. The hall stretches long until the walls converge into a single point. I imagine the portraits of Laura Ingalls Wilder's Papoose, Keep America Beautiful's Crying Indian, Mattel's Eskimo Barbie, Disney's Pocahontas, and how they must face each other after the lights darken, how they must wipe off war paint, how they must unfeather their hair. But it's day now, and I am here again. Like yesterday, the robot points to the work and asks me their pre-programmed question. Do you know which is the evil flower and which is the monstrous griffin? They don't know I've already asked myself what I saw in the mirror this morning. There the evil flower blossomed in fog, and I saw the vine that twines its fruit around my chest. Now here I hate seeing myself reflected in those layers of paint. Now in the museum, the monstrous griffin lives in the space between me and the docent's eye. We remain a prescribed distance apart, enough for the griffin's wingspread to hover between us. There, its primary feathers. Here, terminal phalanxes outstretched. I'd like to share with you one of my favorite exhibits from the museum. Exhibit B, Unfiled Correspondence. Dear Chakotay, simply I loved you, like the captain loves you, in sidelong glances, in unreality. How could I not? You with your tattoo, a professional. You, lost in light years away from home, and yet you believe your ancestors guide you. I've watched you close your eyes to contact your spirit guides. It was more intimate than a kiss. I wanted to learn to pray the same way. Oh, Chakotay, if you'd asked, I would have joined the Maquis to be with you. I would have left my sun and moon to follow you into uncharted space. I'd even adopt the doctrine of discovery for you. I'd imagined us standing on deck quoting Picard, imagined us daring each other to boldly go where no one's gone before. I wanted to want you because you were a wanted Indian, someone I wanted to be. Oh, Chakotay, how my heart broke when I realized each night with your cold cream and washcloth, you untattoo your face before you fall asleep, unreddened, unmarked. P.S. My heart, my red, red heart. For my last poem, I'd like to read Convergence after Jackson Pollock, 1952. How few divining tools I have for your mute ghost. Canvas, tin nails, oil paint, copper coins. The paint's viscosity, its downward velocity. What is a cipher if not language hungering for an ear? Your death. I can't write how they found you. Instead, I find you here, in ochre and burnt umber layered over lead white. Not in violet strokes, but in the breath between canvas and pour. I am trying to tell you I can't write you dead. Instead, I place you in blue as if paint was enough to keep your ghost here. Shannon, thank you so much.
Thank you, all three of you. Wow, that was amazing. And I am so excited to share this space with all of you. And I hope that during Alaska Book Week and Month, everyone takes the opportunity to look for more Alaskan poets. There are lots of us out there, and broaden your horizons. I'm going to actually read my poems by others last because I think I might cry. So I'm going to start with thanking all of you and saying I'm Erin Coughlin Hollowell. I live in Homer, Alaska. I'm the author of 3 full-length collections, Pause Traveler and Every Atom, which are published by Boreal Books. And my latest release is Corvus and Crater, which is published by Salmon Poetry. And most of you know me best by my day gigs, which is I'm the executive director of Story Knife, a women's writers retreat in Homer, and the director of the Kachemak Bay Writers Conference. It's been outstanding to be here. I'm hoping I can keep up with the quality of work. I'm going to start with 4 tiny poems from Corvus and Crater. The entire book, 54 poems with 54 syllables. So they're kind of tiny, bite-sized poems. The first one I'm going to read is called Corvus and Crater. It's the title poem. Roadside prophet, hagstones and feathers rattle you along. Until evening you find your tree, birch, spruce, or alder, and thereon perch, or curl into wild rose or raspberry thicket. Tell us, who loves the keyhole over the key? Most of these poems have crows in them. That was kind of the conceit. So you'll hear it come back. Erasing the words as she writes them. Each mountain trails a veil of spindrift tethered to high cold wind. It could be that there is only one word they speak, but who could climb high enough and still be humble enough to listen? Crow heard the word and maybe understood. There is the body and the unbodied. 10 below zero, dawning becomes a bell silenced. Even her breath hangs for just a moment, then is dampened. She knows the current is there, hidden, and all around her are brief lives. Night empties her, death's gracious final shrug. And this one is close to the last poem in the book. It's the book is a lot about myths and legends and embodiment. So this one's called Ritual for the Last Bridge Home. You become a deer, a salmon. Take flight from a flat gray lake. Winds rushing to meet yourself anew. What mirror could keep up with the changes wrought by your God? All the ways your myth demands another sacrifice, one more life. I thought I would read two poems. These are two poems that just came out in Poetry Ireland Review, and they're from my new project. And the project takes maybe a little bit more explanation to make it make sense. They're poems about Bridget Cleary. She died in 1895. She was murdered by her husband. Strangely enough, my father, when I was a little girl, used to say to me when I was being willful, which you can imagine was just about all the time, are you a witch, or are you a fairy, or are you the wife of Michael Clary? And I didn't know what he meant by that, but you know how kids are like, they don't pay attention anyway. And it wasn't until he died that I did the research. And that's what my current book is about, is Bridget Cleary and what happened to her. And she happened to live in the same place my family is from in Ireland. So this one's called Bridget on Her Saint's Day, and there are three Bridgets in this. There's Bridget Cleary, there's Saint Bridget, and there is the Celtic goddess as well. When I rise to feed the fire, sun not yet risen, but light hinting along the frosted tufts of grass, and firs preparing to flower its flames, I take a small cup of milk out to the Rowan to the east, where the sun's first rays will touch and blaze. A torn white clootie is the brightest thing, left out for Bridget to bless as she travels through the night. Gathered to me, it smells of cold, like a marker stone or a metal bucket. And here I pour the rich milk, gift, appeasement, prayer, to say, protect me from pain and want and anger. Let me lift my head to the sun. Bridget's husband may or may not have believed that she was a changeling, and he and her family underwent some trials to force the changeling out, to allow Bridget to come back. And that's what this poem is about. It's called Bridget Will Not Answer 3 Times. They ask, are you Bridget Beland, wife of Michael Cleary, in the name of God? I am strewn with piss and milk. I am held down and spooned bitter herbs. I am thinking of the fields sweet with furze and heather, the woods spread through with bluebells and violets. They ask, are you Bridget Beland, daughter of Patrick Beland, in the name of God? I am laid upon the fire grate. I am shaken by my legs and shoulders. I am remembering a great hare moving silently through the hedgerow and along the field, winking in and out of my eye. They ask me to whom I belong, but I belong only to me. The wind off Slievenamon, cold, cold, and carrying voices fair. I belong to the wind, the stones. I belong to the hare as she slips in amongst the nettle. I belong to the magpie calling from the ash tree. I belong to my own hands and my own body, which is now trembling, trembling. So I'm going to welcome into the room two poets. I'm cheating. Two poets from Alaska. One is Peggy Shoemaker, and this book I'm going to hold up. Cairn is her selected and new poems that came out. They came out during right at the beginning of the pandemic, so I think people missed them. So I want people to buy this book. This poem is called Becoming Earth. Death is Perfect. Eva Salidas, Christmas Eve, 2015. From the molten core, lava pushes up through Pu'ua vent and sluices to the sea, becoming earth. By listening, orcas single out one king salmon among 1,000 of leaner pinks, becoming earth. In disappearing birch forest, leaf and twig and bird nest fall, becoming earth. At the root of king tree, where generations let go, offerings fade, transform, ash and bone, becoming earth. Swaddled in volcanic spume, Hualale shudders, unpredictable, cracks, becoming earth. Transplanted saguaro break Kalish, sending roots through rock, becoming earth. Flame touched to wick all over the world, this sacred smoke, breath, becoming earth. Tucked into branches woven for this purpose, Eva travels on, becoming earth. Quiet inside, quiet out, the Luna moth lifts, spirals, and then returns, becoming earth. And so one to end us today from Eva, from her book, Prayer in Wind. This is prayer 58. The entire book are these amazing prayers that she wrote every morning. And at the same time, I looked out at the same Grace Ridge and wrote scuttlebutt in my journal. So this is what she wrote. Prayer 58 is to climb on 4 limbs, is to grab branches, moss grown, is to handhold crowberry sphagnum, is to dig heels into leaf death, is to crawl up scree fall, is to pull the body into the saddle where anemones tremble in the southwest gale, is to go where plants are glossed by fog, is to go where grasses nod to what might be listening in that not so lonely place, is to ask, be with me when I fall. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the people that we read with. Thank you to the Alaska Center for the book. And thank you to Trish Jenkins for being here. Thank you all.